Good evening and welcome back to One TV News with me, Esma. Let's start with some national news. A special court in Bengaluru has directed the filing of an FIR against Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman amid allegations of extortion linked to the now defunct electoral bond scheme. The complaint lodged by Adarsh Iyer of the Janadhikara Sangharsh Sanghati or JSP accuses Sitharaman and other senior BJP leaders of running an extortion racket disguised as a legitimate financial initiative. The complaint also names BJP President JP Nadda, Karnataka BJP leaders Nalin Kumar Katil and BY Vijayendra, claiming that corporate entities were pressured into purchasing electoral bonds worth thousands of crores, allegedly facilitated by raids from the Enforcement Directorate as a mean of coercion. It suggests that these bonds were subsequently cashed by BJP leaders at both national and state levels, enabling the accumulation of illicit political funds. In response, the BJP has defended Sitharaman, labeling the allegations as politically motivated and arguing the electoral bond scheme is a matter of policy, not a criminal issue. BJP spokesperson Dr. Sudha Halkai criticized Karnataka Chief Minister Sitharamaiah, pointing out his past legal troubles and the numerous cases against Congress leaders. Sitharamaiah, currently facing scrutiny over an FIR in Mysore Urban Development Authority land allotment case, has challenged the consistency of accountability, questioning why leaders like Sitharaman and former Karnataka Chief Minister H.D. Kumaraswamy, who are also under investigation, have not been asked to resign. As the political landscape continues to shift, the implications of these allegations and their responses from both parties remain a focal point of discussion in Karnataka. At a vibrant BJP campaign rally in MA Stadium, Prime Minister Narendra Modi emphasized the significance of the 2016 surgical strikes, asserting they showcased a new India capable of striking deep within enemy territory. He stated that these operations sent a clear message to the mentors of terrorism, particularly Pakistan, warning that any future mischief would be met with decisive retaliation. Recalling the surgical strikes conducted in response to the Uri terror attack, PM Modi reiterated that the enemy is now aware of the consequences of their actions, saying, "If they do anything serious in our country, then Modi will hit them deep inside the country." The Prime Minister criticized the Congress party for questioning the surgical strikes and accused them of being aligned with urban Naxalites, suggesting they view terrorism as a potential vote bank. He highlighted the government's commitment to the armed forces, noting the implementation of one rank, one pension scheme. Speaking on the birth anniversary of martyr Bhagat Singh, Modi expressed deep patriotism and reflected on the legacy of leaders from Jammu. He asserted that the people of Jammu and Kashmir are wary of the traditional political families of the NC, PDP and Congress and are seeking a government focused on peace and progress. As he concluded his campaign rally, PM Modi expressed confidence in the BJP forming the first majority government in Jammu and Kashmir, driven by the people's desire for a better future.
आज 28 सितंबर है। साल 2016 में आज की रात 28 सितंबर की रात सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक हुई थी। भारत ने दुनिया को बता दिया था, ये नया भारत है, ये घर में घुसकर मारता है। एक वो दिन था और एक आज का दिन है। आतंक के आकाओं को पता है, अगर कुछ भी हिमाकत की तो मोदी पाताल में भी उन्हें खोज निकालेगा। लेकिन साथियों, आपको कांग्रेस का रवैया कभी भी भूलना नहीं है। कांग्रेस वो पार्टी है जिसने हमारी फौज से सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक के सबूत मांगे थे। कांग्रेस वो पार्टी है जो आज भी सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक को लेकर पाकिस्तान की भाषा बोलती है। आप मुझे बताइए, क्या कभी भी आप ऐसी कांग्रेस को माफ कर सकते हैं क्या? माफ कर सकते हैं क्या? साथियों, देश के लिए मर मिटने वालों का कांग्रेस कभी सम्मान नहीं कर सकती। यही कांग्रेस है जिसने 4 दशक तक हमारे फौजी परिवारों को 1 रैंक 1 पेंशन के लिए तरसाया। कांग्रेस ने हमारे फौजियों से झूठ बोला। ये कहते थे कि 1 रैंक 1 पेंशन ओआरओपी से खजाने पर बोझ पड़ेगा, लेकिन मोदी ने फौजी परिवारों के हितों के आगे कभी भी खजाने को नहीं देखा है। और इसलिए 2014 में सरकार बनने के बाद हमने ओआरओपी लागू किया। अभी तक फौजी परिवारों को 1,20,000 करोड़ रुपए से अधिक मिल चुका है। हाल में हमने ओआरओपी को रिवाइज भी किया है, जिससे फौजी परिवारों को और ज्यादा पैसा मिलना तय हुआ है।
Ahead of the Haryana Assembly elections, the Congress party has released a comprehensive manifesto highlighting key promises aimed at attracting voters. The launch event featured prominent leaders including Bhupinder Singh Hooda, former Rajasthan Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot, and Haryana Pradesh Congress Committee President Uday Bhan. Among the standout commitments, Congress pledged to provide 300 units of free electricity and free medical treatment up to 25 lakhs for every family in Haryana. Additionally, the party plans to offer 2,000 rupees per month to women aged 18 to 60, mirroring initiatives from Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. Other financial support includes 500 rupees for gas cylinders. In a significant move for farmers, Congress reiterated its promise for a legal guarantee of minimum support price or MSP for crops and immediate compensation for crop losses. The party also plans to establish a farmer commission and provide diesel subsidies. Further commitments include offering plots to 200 yards and 2-room houses to impoverished family, conducting a caste-based survey, and increasing the creamy layer limit to 10 lakh rupees. Additionally, Congress aims to create 2 lakh permanent jobs for youth and promote a drug-free Haryana. Contrasting the central government stance, Congress pledged to restore the old pension scheme and provide 6,000 rupees in pensions for senior citizens, the disabled and widows under various schemes. Highlighting social justice, Congress leader Geeta Bhukkal emphasized plans to build a university in Kurukshetra dedicated to Guru Govind Singh Ji and to support the Punjabi language. At the manifesto launch, Hooda understood the thorough research and hard work behind the document, drawing inspiration from successful initiatives in Rajasthan and other states. Haryana's elections are set to October 5th with counting scheduled for October 8 as the Congress aims to regain ground in state assembly.
सीवरेज में कार्य करते हैं उनको 5,000 रुपया एक्स्ट्रा दिया जाएगा। साथ ही साथ में अगर सीवरेज की सफाई करते हुए किसी सफाई कर्मचारी की मृत्यु होती है तो उसको 30 लाख रुपए तक का बीमा कवर दिया जाएगा। और साथ ही साथ में नीति बनाकर सफाई कर्मचारियों को पक्का करने का काम कांग्रेस पार्टी की सरकार करेगी। हरियाणा राज्य में हमारा किसान आयोग का गठन हम करेंगे। हरियाणा सिख गुरुद्वारा प्रबंधक कमेटी का अच्छे ढंग से हम लोग जो बनाई है उसमें हम लोग चुनाव करवाने का काम करेंगे। हरियाणा राज्य पूर्व अर्धसैनिक बल कल्याण बोर्ड का गठन कांग्रेस पार्टी करेगी। विमुक्त घुमंतु अर्ध घुमंतु एनटीएन डीएनटी वेलफेयर बोर्ड का गठन करेंगी ताकि उनको भी पूरे अधिकार मिल सके। राज्य शिक्षक चयन आयोग का गठन सरकार करेगी और शिक्षकों को हम लोगों का प्रयास रहेगा स्टेट अवार्डी शिक्षकों को 2 साल जो हमारे समय में दिए जाते थे वो उनको एक्सटेंशन देने का हम काम करेंगे। चारागाह विकास बोर्ड, बहुत से हमारे साथियों की आदरणीय चौधरी भूपेंद्र सिंह हुड्डा जी के पास ये मांग निकल कर आई कि हमारा जो गोधन आवारा या बेसहारा पशु घूमते हैं उनके लिए चारे की व्यवस्था होनी चाहिए, तो एक अलग से चारागाह विकास बोर्ड का गठन किया जाएगा। हम इसमें हमारी गौशालाओं को भी सशक्त करने का काम करेंगे। हमारा हरियाणा माटी कला बोर्ड, इसमें पहले भी हमारे माटी कला बोर्ड का गठन किया गया था। हरियाणा केश कला बोर्ड, उसका गठन किया जाएगा। हरियाणा स्वर्णकार कल्याण बोर्ड, उसका गठन किया जाएगा। हरियाणा सिलाई कढ़ाई दर्जी वेलफेयर बोर्ड, आज की समय की मांग है, उनके लिए भी हम लोग बोर्ड का गठन करेंगे। हरियाणा ब्राह्मण कल्याण आयोग का गठन होगा। पूर्वांचल कल्याण बोर्ड का गठन होगा। नशा मुक्ति हरियाणा आयोग अलग से बनाया जाएगा ताकि हरियाणा हमारा नशा मुक्त रहे। हरियाणा राज्य पंजाबी वेलफेयर बोर्ड, और हम लोग आपसे ये वायदा करते हैं कि आम नागरिक के सम्मान और खुशहाली के लिए इस घोषणा पत्र के द्वारा भारतीय राष्ट्रीय कांग्रेस सेवा भावना तथा आधुनिक हरियाणा की नींव मजबूत करने की अपनी राजनीतिक प्रतिबद्धता को दोहराती है। हाथ बदलेगा हालात, हाथ का साथ दीजिए, कांग्रेस को वोट दीजिए। आ रही है कांग्रेस और जा रही है बीजेपी, बीजेपी जा रही है, कांग्रेस आ रही है। इसी प्रतिबद्धता के साथ हरियाणा प्रदेश कांग्रेस कमेटी का घोषणा पत्र आप सबके सामने प्रस्तुत है। आप सबका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। जय हिंद।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद गीता जी। अशोक गहलोत जी, हमारे कांग्रेस सदस्य उदयभान जी, गीता जी, सेक्रेटरी साहबान, हमारे वर्किंग प्रेसिडेंट जितेंद्र भारद्वाज जी तथा साथियों, देखिए ये बहुत मेहनत से घोषणा पत्र बना है और मैं इस बात की बधाई देता हूं जो हमारी चेयरपर्सन है घोषणा पत्र की गीता भुक्कल जी और सभी साथियों जिनका इसमें हो रहा है। और बहुत सारी बातें राजस्थान से हमने सीखी, जो अशोक गहलोत जी जो मुख्यमंत्री जैसे 25 लाख की जो वो की, तो बहुत सारी स्टेटों का हमने मंगा के तब इन्होंने पूरा अध्ययन करके दिया है। मैं एक बात सबका धन्यवाद भी करता हूं और आप सबसे माफी भी मांगता हूं। मेरा टेक ऑफ का टाइम है, ये बैठे सब ये क्वेश्चन आंसर करेंगे। अशोक गहलोत जी का धन्यवाद भी करता हूं, बहुत समय दे रहे हमारे लिए, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और आप सबसे भी माफी मांगता हूं, आप सबका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। नहीं सॉरी, मैं राम सिंह, नहीं कोई बात नहीं है, कर देना इनका। राम सिंह जी मैं माफी चाहता हूं। नहीं एक का सवाल दिया तो फिर मेरे तो यही हो जाएगा, मेरे को मजबूरी है। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। जय हिंद।
और मैं अनुरोध करूंगा आदरणीय श्री अशोक गहलोत साहब से, इस पर थोड़ा अपना उद्बोधन तो कि वो भी जो भी चुनाव घोषणा पत्र रिलीज किया है उस पर भी अपना संदेश।
मैनिफेस्टो कॉपी अभी आप सबको डिस्ट्रीब्यूट की जाएगी। और कल मैं बैठा था आप मित्रों के साथ में, तब आपने कहा था भी पत्रकारों के लिए राजस्थान सरकार ने पेंशन की थी और हेल्थ की सर्विसेज फ्री करी थी। तो आपको आगे खुशी होगी कि मैनिफेस्टो के अंदर पत्रकारों को कैशलेस स्वास्थ्य सुविधा और सेवानिवृत्त पत्रकारों की पेंशन बढ़ोतरी। तो ये जो गारंटी कार्ड जो मिला है, आजकल आप देखते हैं हर राज्यों के अंदर जब चुनाव आते हैं तो गारंटी कार्ड के अलग पता चल पड़ी है। हालांकि मैनिफेस्टो कमेटी ने जो गारंटी कार्ड दिया आपको, वो भी एक बहुत बेमिसाल है। और अभी गीता मुखर्जी ने जो पूरी बात आपको बताई है, बहुत शानदार ये मैनिफेस्टो जनता को पूछ के बना है। मैं उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आप सबको, प्रदेशवासियों को भी जो कमिटमेंट किए गए हैं, वादे किए गए हैं, आप जानते हैं कि कांग्रेस की क्रेडिबिलिटी है कि जो वादा करती है वो निभाती है, निभाने का प्रयास भी करती है। बीजेपी खाली बिना तथ्यों के बात करती है, बिना आधार के बात करती है, इतना फर्क है। 10 साल का शासन जो कांग्रेस का था और 10 साल शासन जो बीजेपी का था अभी हाल ही में, या अभी है, आपको मालूम रात दिन का फर्क है। तो मैनिफेस्टो मैं समझता हूँ कि बहुत सोच समझ के बनाया गया और गीता मुखर्जी ने विस्तार से भी आपको बता दिया। मैं यही बात कहना चाहूँगा कि आप निश्चिंत रहे, कांग्रेस सरकार बनेगी। उसके बाद में मैनिफेस्टो पे चर्चा होगी, आप लोग क्वेश्चन पूछेंगे, कौन सी वादा किया गया, वो वादा आगे बढ़ा नहीं बढ़ा है, क्यों नहीं बढ़ा है। मैं समझता हूँ कि बहुत शानदार तरीके से वादे निभाएंगे। यही बात मैं कहता हूँ। धन्यवाद।
Megastar Chiranjeevi was celebrated at the inaugural of IFA Utsavam at event spotlighting the southern film industry, including Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam and Kannada cinema. The iconic actor received the Outstanding Achievement in Indian Cinema Award, recognizing his remarkable contributions to the industry. A heartwarming clip shared on IFA's official Instagram captured the moment as Chiranjeevi accepted the award from esteemed figures Shabana Azmi and Javed Akhtar. The caption hailed it as an iconic moment, celebrating the legacy and artistry of storytelling in Indian cinema. With a career spanning over 4 decades and more than 150 films, Chiranjeevi has delivered numerous hits, including classics like Swayam Krushi, Rudra Veena and Gang Leader. His recent projects Voltaire, Viraya and Godfather have continued to showcase his star power, with his latest release Bhola Shankar hitting theatres in 2023. Fans eagerly await his upcoming film Vishwambhara. Devra Part 1 debuted to a strong reception on Friday, ranking a 77 crore across all languages on its opening day, according to Industry Tracker. The action drama directed by Koratla Siva achieved an impressive 79.56 occupancy in Telugu theatres. Starring Junior NTR and Janhvi Kapoor with Saif Ali Khan as the antagonist Bhairava, the film also features talents like Shruti Marathe, Zarina Wahab and Taluri Ramashwari. Produced by Sudhakar Mikkilineni, Kosaraju Harikrishna and Nandamuri Kalyan Ram under Yuva Sudha Arts and NTR Arts. Devra Part 1 shows significant underwater sequences. In a recent promotional chat with filmmaker Sandeep Reddy Vanga, Junior NTR shared insights into film's ambitious production. He revealed that the team spent 30 to 35 days filming underwater, emphasizing the scale of the project. We created a massive pool in the studio to shoot our action sequences, which became one of the key moments in Devra, he explained. Highlighting the film's coastal themes and extensive water elements, as Devra Part 1 continues to capture audiences, it sets the stage for an exciting cinematic journey ahead. The IPL Governing Council is set to meet on Saturday evening as part of the BCCI's 93rd annual grand meeting scheduled for Sunday. A key agenda item will be the retention rules for the upcoming IPL 2025 auction. Reports suggest the board may finalize a system allowing each team to retain 5 players along with one right to match or RTM option. In preparation to these challenges, the BCCI engaged with all 10 IPL team owners in July to gather input on the retention framework. High-profile franchises, particularly the Mumbai Indians and Chennai Super Kings, face critical decisions regarding their rosters, especially with notable players like MS Dhoni in the mix. The mega auction is anticipated to take place in the second week of November, and the meeting may also reveal the auction venue. However, it remains unclear whether the retention and auction decisions will be announced immediately following Saturday's meeting or discussed further at the AGM. As the IPL approaches its 2025 season, franchises will be navigating a major overhaul of their rosters with the potential for a 2-day auction event similar to the previous years. In the last mega auction in 2022, teams were allowed to retain up to 4 players, but opinions vary on the ideal number for the upcoming cycle, with some advocating for a limit of 8 while others prefer the existing cap. Now finally, it's time for some international news. In a sign of escalating tensions, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been relocated to a secure location within the country, according to 2 regional officials briefed by Tehran. This moves come in the wake of Israel's announcement that it has killed Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah in a strike on southern Beirut. The Iranian leadership is reportedly in constant communication with Hezbollah and other regional proxy groups to assess their next steps. The implications of Nasrallah's potential absence are significant as Iran seeks to maintain its influence in the region while navigating a precarious security landscape. As developments unfold, the international community is closely monitoring the situation for further escalation in hostilities. In a robust response to Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's remarks at the United Nations General Assembly, India has issued a stern warning emphasizing that Pakistan's continued support for cross-border terrorism will inevitably invite consequences. India's first Secretary to the UN, Bhavika Mangalanandan, delivered a pointed rebuttal accusing Pakistan of using terrorism as a state policy and highlighting its notorious reputation for global terrorism and transnational crime. This statement follows Sharif's call for India to reverse its 2019 abrogation of Article 370, which revoked Jammu and Kashmir's special status. Mangalanandan described Sharif's speech as audacious, given Pakistan's history to orchestrating attacks on India, including the 2001 Indian Parliament attack and the 2008 Mumbai attacks. She underscored the contrast between Pakistan's military-led government and India's status as the world's largest democracy, urging the international community to recognize Pakistan's true nature. The exchange highlights ongoing tensions between the two nations as they grapple with historical grievances and security challenges.
Mr. President, this assembly regrettably witnessed a travesty this morning. A country run by the military with a global reputation for terrorism, narcotics trade, and transnational crime, has had the audacity to attack the world's largest democracy. I speak about the reference to India in the speech of the Pakistani Prime Minister. As the world knows, Pakistan has long employed cross-border terrorism as a weapon against its neighbors. It has attacked our parliament, our financial capital Mumbai, marketplaces, and pilgrimage routes. The list is long. For such a country to speak about violence anywhere is hypocrisy at its worst. It is even more extraordinary for a country with a history of rigged elections to talk about political choices, that too in a democracy. The real truth is that Pakistan covets our territory and in fact has continuously used terrorism to disrupt elections in Jammu and Kashmir, an inalienable and integral part of India. A reference has been made to some proposal of strategic restraint. there can be no compact with terrorism. In fact, Pakistan should realize that cross-border terrorism against India will inevitably invite consequences. It is ridiculous that a nation that committed genocide in 1971 and which persecutes its minorities relentlessly even now dare speak about intolerances and phobias. The world can see for itself what Pakistan really is. Mr. President, we are talking about a nation that for long hosted Osama bin Laden, a country whose fingerprints are on so many terrorist incidents across the world, whose policies attract the dregs of many societies to make it their home. Perhaps it should come as no surprise that its Prime Minister would so speak in this hallowed hall. Yet, we must make clear how unacceptable his words are to all of us. We know that Pakistan will seek to counter the truth with more lies. Repetition will change nothing. Our stand is clear and needs no reiteration. Thank you, Mr. President.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has voiced deep concern over the ongoing conflict in Gaza, labeling it a clear violation of international human rights law. During a recent Security Council meeting, he emphasized that the collective punishment of Palestinians cannot be justified under any circumstances. Guterres highlighted the alarming increase in the rate of killing in Gaza, noting that it surpasses levels seen during his tenure, exacerbating an already dire humanitarian situation. He urged the international community to take immediate and decisive action to address the crisis and work towards a sustainable solution. His statements reflect a growing urgency among global leaders to confront the humanitarian challenges facing the region.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, I thank the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and Sweden for co-chairing this gathering and for their continued leadership in the support to UNRWA. And I also thank all of you here today for your solidarity with Palestine refugees. When we met 1 year ago, I spoke about putting ourselves in the shoes of Palestinians in Gaza, of imagining what life must be like. And I ended my remarks 1 year ago by saying, this is the most dramatic humanitarian problem associated with the riskiest explosive potential. This was just days before the horrors of October 7. Now, almost 1 year since that day, the situation for Palestinians in Gaza is beyond imagination. It has been said that the United Nations was not created to bring us to heaven, but to save us from hell. Unfortunately, neither the United Nations nor anyone else that might have the power to do it was able to save the people of Gaza from hell. We have failed the people of Gaza. They are in a living hell that somehow gets even worse by the day. Over 41,000 people have been reportedly killed and more than 90,000 wounded, many with life-changing and lifelong injuries. The majority are women and children. 2 million Palestinians are now crammed into a space the size of Shanghai International Airport, existing, not living, but existing, among lakes of sewage, piles of rubbish, and mountains of rubble. The only certainty they have is that tomorrow will be worse. Yet, if there is any outpost of hope in this hellscape, it is UNRWA. Even though UNRWA, as we all know, has not been spared. On the human level, 222 UNRWA colleagues have been killed, many together with entire families, several in the line of duty. This is the highest death toll in UN history. I ask you, all of you, to think for a moment in the different entities that you preside or to which we belong. What would be the impact if 222 members would have been killed, and even after that, having to go on with their duties to save the people of Palestine? UNRWA personnel have been attacked repeatedly while going about their work. Women and men are displaced, shot at, and subject to violent protests, detained by Israeli security forces, reporting mistreatment and torture. UNRWA has not been spared on the operational level. The humanitarian response in Gaza is being strangled. Protection and deconfliction mechanisms for humanitarian aid deliveries have failed. Attempts to evict UNRWA from its headquarters in East Jerusalem continue. And UNRWA has not been spared on the political level. These include systematic disinformation campaigns to discredit the agency's lifelong work. Meanwhile, draft legislation in the Israeli parliament seeks to label the agency a terrorist organization and to make any activity by UNRWA on Israel or Israel territory illegal. In the face of the catastrophic conditions, UNRWA perseveres. And this is a tribute to the resilience of the women and men of UNRWA and a tribute to your support. Excellencies, I have full confidence in UNRWA's continued commitment to upholding the humanitarian principles of neutrality, impartiality, and humanity, and to implement the recommendations of the independent review by Catherine Colonna. And member states are showing that same confidence. Virtually all donors have reversed their funding suspensions. 123 countries have signed up to the Declaration on Shared Commitments to UNRWA. And this underscores the consensus that UNRWA's role across the occupied West Bank and the region is vital. Friends, there is no alternative to UNRWA. Now is the time to work on all fronts to intensify support for the agency's vital mission. Support with funding that is sufficient, predictable, and flexible. Of course, we all know that UNRWA is not a sustainable long-term solution to the plight of Palestine refugees. It was never meant to be. That is why we keep pressing for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, the immediate release of all hostages, and a long-term political solution, ending the occupation and leading to two states living side by side in peace and security with Jerusalem as the capital. But until that moment, UNRWA remains indispensable. I urge your full support. Help us to save UNRWA as it works to save and serve Palestine.
That's all for today. Stay connected for more updates. Thank you.